Hi, and welcome to a Small, Medium, at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Hyson, bringing you intimate interviews beyond normal boundaries. I want to thank my son Richard, my daughter Nancy, for producing and posting our show on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, and other social media sites. I also want to thank all of you listeners for liking, subscribing, sharing, sending us wonderful comments about the shows that you've watched. And for those of you like our dedicated woman in London, Amanita, she's been with us since the first show and she has not missed one of our 88 shows yet. So when we get to London, maybe in March, we're going to see our one of our listeners and have lunch with her. So I want to tell you, we have a couple of upcoming guests in the next January, February shows. You'll be hearing from Marilyn Schlitz and her award-winning bestseller novel, Love Study. We have Dean Radin and the Sigil Experiment coming up, and Sean McNamara on meditation and psychedelics. So keep listening, keep liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. So today, let me tell you about our returning guest to a Small, Medium, at Large podcast. Reverend Karen E. Herrick has a master's degree in social work from Rutgers University, and she has shared her clinical expertise for 30 years in her private practice on dysfunctional and addictive homes, disassociation, grief, and loss from a Jungian psychological perspective. Since 1995, her interfaith ministry has been actively involved in spiritual psychology, specifically in naming spiritual experiences and working with chronic grief. She is a lecturer with CEU, providing webinars in Jungian psychology, spirituality, and mental health and other topics. She is the author of You're Not Finished Yet, Grandma, What is a Soul? And Psychology of the Soul and the Paranormal. These books are all available to you through Amazon.com. I'm going to tell you her two websites, which I will spell out. It's KarenHerrick.com and GrandmaWhatIsASoul.com. Her first website is all lowercase, KarenHerrick.com. And her other website is GrandmaWhatisASOul.com, all lowercase. Tomorrow, January 16, for all you listeners that are watching today, Karen is having a webinar from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time titled Mind Over Matter, a cultural and scientific exploration of consciousness. To register, you go to capital C, capital E, capital Y, lowercase o, lowercase u.org, and there you can register for this class. Today, we're going to talk about this course. So let's welcome our returning guest, Reverend Karen Herrick. Welcome,
Thank you.
Karen.
Thanks so much, Gail. It's great to be back.
It's great to see you again. You're looking great. Uh, Seems like you're a very busy woman because the last time we were here, we talked about the vagus nerve, and I had never heard about it until I had read your book and you were my guest. And after I put that down, it was like the vagus nerve was coming at me at every single place, even in the media news, in mainstream media, they were talking about it. Everywhere I
Yeah.
was going, it was like a whole world opened up to me for this nerve with pictures and information. And it was like amazing. And I know we're not here to talk about this today, but I just had to bring this up in case there's anything you want to mention about it before we go on to our discussion about your upcoming class.
I just think that the vagus nerve is the 10th and longest nerve in your body. As you know, comes in at the top of your head, goes around your neck, touches the amygdala, which is fight, flight, or frozen, goes down into your heart and down into your stomach. So Darwin, in the 1700s, said that you could calm yourself down because your fear is triggered in your stomach, and you could breathe, come in on breathe short in, and then out as long as you can go. So in 4, maybe hold it for 4, and then out for a long time. And that kind of, some people call it a yoga breath. would help calm down the vagus nerve. So I got interested in it because it was for anxiety and panic, which a lot of people have coming from dysfunctional and alcoholic homes. But then I went to Lilydale, which is a medium town but in upstate New York by Lake Erie. And I saw these pictures that the librarian said nobody had looked at that for 30 years, but it was all these illustrations of this cord from the back of your neck and the cord from your stomach, and people dying and going up to heaven, and the cords go with them. So
Wow.
I did some research on the sympathetic nervous system, which Carl Jung says is the way that needs to be explored. They all say it needs to be explored in the future. Well, I think the future is now. And
I,
that is the way that I believe that your spiritual body leaves your physical body. And so your spiritual body goes up the vagus nerve, which would be like a tunnel. There's no windows in there, and your spiritual body chemicals, and just a different blob, like an egg blob, that goes up and comes out. And when you come out the top of your head, that's when you would see the light in the etheric universe, right? So I would like eventually someday to get some feedback on that from other people that have studied clairvoyance, because you have to be clairvoyant to understand that this happens and to see it. I mean, I can't see it. I can describe it to you and give you an illustration. So yes, I'm very excited about the vagus nerve. So I hope that more people know about it, because medical model is now using it for to calm you down. And we know when we faint, that's the vagus nerve, it just stops. Okay.
mhm.
And singing helps. So if you sing, you get a lot more energy into your body, because the vagus touches every organ you have. So it's a wonderful nerve to know about physically and spiritually.
Yes, and I know that's not what our topic is today, but there's one part of it that really does talk about it, because we are talking about near-death experiences and other things in those realms. And I think this is very valuable information to be looking into, as it may be the point of exiting, like you're saying. This is the possibility. So this could be a future show here or somewhere else. If anyone else is interested, they know how to contact you. And I find the vagus nerve was a fascinating. It was wonderful to learn about this.
It really
So
is. Yes. Thank you
today,
for mentioning that.
yes, today we're going into the cultural and scientific exploration of consciousness and the mind over matter webinar you're going to have tomorrow. And before we start with my questions for that, I wanted to know what made you decide to create this seminar, and who is it suited for?
Well, CEYOU.org teaches other therapists about Jungian psychology, because Jungian psychology, you have to go to an institute, it's very expensive, and a lot of social workers and psychologists want to know about it. So I have, gotten that little niche there. And I am, before I die, I am going to teach thousands of people somehow that there is, like William James said, an invisible world all around us. And the
Yes.
more that we know about that, the better we live life, and we're not afraid to die. And that's really what Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, with the near-death experience, has taught us. That people that have gone and come back, they aren't afraid to die anymore. And this gentleman, Amance Baruch, and I'm going to show you the book. Um, so it's Death as an Altered State of Consciousness, a Scientific Review. And the American Psychological Association published this in 2023. And I was so excited, because if the APA has published something, more therapists will pay attention. And then anybody else that wants to take this 3-hour webinar can do it. You don't have to be a therapist.
Mhm.
But that is who I am trying to help, because so many of the therapists are not trained in spirituality of the level of your spiritual body going leaving your body. So now that they say that, I feel like I can talk better known than the 25 years I've been studying it, which we have all read these books that Baruch has read. But he really does put it in a very nice research model for people.
That's wonderful, because uh, I'm not a therapist, but I've been a client of therapists. And as a child, when I was telling them that I was seeing things or hearing things or having dreams about death before it happens and hearing voices, I remember I had to fill out some kind of psychological questionnaire, and
Yes,
they labeled me a schizophrenic,
I
manic
know.
depressive. And they would have, if I would have listened to them, I would have been on drugs from a teenager on, when they didn't understand that I was having spiritual experiences, not that I was.
Well, that's why it's so important that a therapist know this when somebody comes into their office. There's a possibility of this, and no matter what they believe, personally, they can be able to listen to the person, because that's the most important thing, is that you validate. Yes, other people have had this. We've been studying this for at least 150 years, so we have lots and lots of information. It's just not out in the public, and psychology, the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association have stayed away from this, because religion should not be part of therapy, which I think is ridiculous. Um, and what this book shows is that culturally, because I talk about different cultures tomorrow, it isn't so much your culture, because most people have the same um, characteristics at the end of a near death, whether they're Muslim or, from Japan, Shinto, whatever they are, they have the same feelings of love. They want their life to be better. They've seen the light. They talk to, their loved ones, or else been to castles and all these other beautiful places. Um, so it doesn't matter what culture you are. If you have a near death, the only thing culture determines is, they say, like American Indians, they don't necessarily go through a tunnel, they go down a long road.
Mhm.
But so it'd be the images of the culture that they would be talking about, but the after effect is the same. They know there is a God. They know that there's an afterlife, and they know their relatives are there.
So when as a lot of our listeners know, I've spent time with other cultures in intimate ways. And
Yes,
um, what I'm curious about, that I felt, is that the American culture is so lacking in all of this, that the Native American cultures and the Mongolian cultures, or what, for me, these are the cultures that I've been involved with, that
yes.
these people, to this is a normal way of discussing or talking about things in the culture, about death and all this. In our culture, it seems like they don't even want to talk about death. They don't even want to discuss these things. I mean, I think like we're sort of like more ignorant here in our culture. It seems like our culture needs to be awakened more about this topic. Well, how do
To
you
not
feel?
be
You're seeing
not
the
be so
people.
afraid of the unknown, because William James in 1910 said that there's an invisible world all around us, and the best way to understand the medium is to go to one. Because
Uh-huh.
that's what he and his wife did, because they lost a toddler child. So Mrs. James took him along, and they met Lenora Piper, who you can Google, and she was correct 85% of the time, which is an excellent rate for a medium.
Hmm.
And they did everything to this woman for 25 years. I mean, they checked her mail, they put sand in her mouth. I mean, all these things. I would say, wouldn't 5 years be enough? The woman has a gift, and so we all have different gifts, but clairvoyant gifts need to be understood.
Hmm.
And what's so nice is that with Raymond Moody, he was on a PhD consultant on my PhD committee, and he's a wonderful Southern gentleman. He's still alive. He's in Florida somewhere, no, California. Anyway, so he wrote the book on 1975, Life After Life. And here are the characteristics of having a near death. So that's where they start in the book, is knowing about Raymond's book. Okay.
Hmm.
So number one is detachment from the physical body, peace, contentment, and a feeling of unconditional love, passing through a dark tunnel, which could be the vagus nerve, seeing a brilliant light or divine being, seeing loved ones who have died, a review of one's entire life. So they say that when we die, and a lot of near death people have had this, it's like seeing a movie of the time you're born till you die. But many of them have also seen past lives, and they don't even believe in reincarnation.
Hmm.
But they've seen their past lives. Now they believe in reincarnation when they come back, which is most of the world except America, right? And then profound lessons about life and universal laws, and sometimes a choice or forced to return to life to live in a new way that is congruent with what you have been taught while you've been over there. And you don't have to have all of these characteristics to have a near death, but so people have some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the first place to start. And then Baruch talks about how he wants you to understand the afterlife from the view of the spirit. So when you and I die, we will not be a person anymore. We will be a spirit. And then an old-fashioned word for that is discarnate. So if you see that, that means a ghost or a spirit. So he has 16 points that he makes from a spirit's perspective. And so I am going to read them to you, and interrupt me at any time and that you want to add to this or have a question. So
Okay.
number one would be that the physical body ceases to function and enters the state of decomposition, which can take up to 3 days, the way I understand it. They have so many definitions now of death. It is just amazing.
I
Um,
have, I can just do want to add something because of you saying this. I just started a workshop with Sandra Ingerman,
Mhm.
and which was yesterday. And the first class thing was all about seeing your body dismembered, or
Okay.
seeing the flesh, like what you're saying, that we separate from the body falls away from us. So she's
Yes.
suggesting that if we practice this idea of welcoming a positive spirit into our space when we're meditating or drumming or whatever this is that we're doing, we then imagine that whether it's a bird or our own self, or we just see the flesh falling off the bones and then the bones all separating and you're only left with the organs. It was I had never tried that type of imagery of really acknowledging that what is left after you get rid of all those parts that we know as us. And
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating. So I just had to share that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. It's good. But most people, your average American listening to that would be scared to death. Now,
Ah,
who wants to know that, right?
oh,
Because what they don't understand is that we have two bodies. We have this physical one that it gets dismembered when we die, yes, and then we have a spiritual body. Okay, so that's like an egg of chemicals and everything that's inside of us that contains our consciousness, our unconsciousness, our mind, and our soul. So
mhm.
that's called the psyche. Okay, and so if you really know that you have two bodies, then you don't mind if one body gets disembodied, right? But
Right.
otherwise, that's scary because see, they don't want to know what they can't see.
Hmm.
So this is why it's so interesting that Baruch talks about the boggle threshold. And I love this term from his book. This would be my favorite term. The boggle threshold indicates the level at which the mind reacts with a negative reaction that is caused by bizarre ideas. That's a bizarre idea you just said, and the improbability of the phenomena, right? So that's so people are going to say, that's why I wanted to educate from this book, because you have to say that I can buy and that I can't buy. And
Hmm.
while you're doing this process, maybe as I'm educating you for 3 hours, something will hit and show you something that you felt the presence of someone, or you feel someone staring at you when you sit in the library at night and you don't, nobody's there, but there's somebody staring at me, right?
Hmm.
So, okay, that could be a spirit. And the spirits are coming. Normally, they would be your relatives, and they want to tell you something. They want to be there for a reason. So the boggle threshold is very important, that to know you have one, and where do we, need to educate a little bit more, or even are you willing to do that, right? But to anchor the threshold, I believe more education is needed. More stories need to be told. And because in my PhD research with my thesis, I had a spirituality group that ran for like 18 months, same
Wow.
7 or 8 people. And those people had the higher level spiritual experiences, then just I would go to your university and I would teach a workshop for 2 to 3 hours, and we would have, well, Gail, what have you had happen to you that you think is weird that you haven't told anybody? And so they had spiritual experiences, and one of them had a near death and all that, but they just told one time so that their percentage was not as high.
Mm-hmm.
So we really need to be able to talk about this more. So that's why, your show is so important, because you say these things and they're like, well, I really like Gail, but wow, that sounds really weird, right? But so you are teaching the boggle threshold and helping to open it up. And he said, idle talk and curiosity sometimes places one in a groundlessness condition of confusion. Yeah. So people just talk about it and they have no answer.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, telling other therapists and other people, listen to your client's story and compare that with the new knowledge you're going to get, in this webinar, or if you read Marusa's book. Okay, so we have the physical body decomposing. Now, accompanying that is a physiological shift where there is no meaningful physical behavior. And I guess that's probably what scares most people, because this is the body, the only body they think they own. There appears to be an experiential stream of consciousness suffused with subjective qualia. Now, that's another new word that he uses, which is from philosophy. And I would just say quality. But he wants you to know it's a phenomenal quality. So, qualia. And this is named phenomenal consciousness, where you have thoughts, feelings, images that are meaningful as a spirit. Okay? So, while we're watching, it's like someone leave their body, like you were talking about, your animal, your dog. Sometimes we have a deathbed phenomena where we're sitting by the bed, and it's been known that some people leave their physical body and go with their mother or grandmother, whoever's dying, and then there seems to be a cutoff where they have to come back. So that's one type of deathbed phenomena. Or they see the spirit leave, which looks like a ghost, right? And you were talking about the last breath, and maybe they just see a breath leave. But
I've
that's
always,
death, right? That's
I've, al-
deathbed phenomena.
I think I didn't understand what that word meant, but I feel like I've been that kind of person to a bunch of different people, some I may not even know, where
Yes.
it's like all of a sudden I get contacted and I'm totally immersed in this person and I have no idea why or necessarily know that they're dying at that moment, but I have a complete connection with them
Their
and
spirit. Yes.
with their spirit. And I do have quite a few where one being my actual mother of birth, when she died, there was I had no communication with anyone in her family, but I called my father up and I said, Margie just died today. And he said, how do you know? I said, I don't know. I just know.
Yes.
And that's how it is for me with death. It's a very familiar, comfortable place. And I always seem to be somehow going with that person or being in a dream while they're dying and I'm there with them. And then I have to say, you have to go without, I can't go any further with you. I really understand that because it's happened to me so many times.
Yes.
And mostly with people I know that are family or close, but I've also had them with ones where I don't even know them. I just meet them for a second and I turn around and I go, oh my God, they're going to die in 2 weeks. And I just feel it all.
Yes.
So I
That's what a
just want to
medium
say
does,
it's real.
everybody.
Yeah,
And that's called that's called clairvoyant ability. And we need
right.
to study clairvoyant ability more, because that's where all this happens, in the clairvoyant reality. Okay.
Mhm,
So the spirit has thoughts, feelings. Where am I? Many spirits feel like they're in a dream, because
mhm,
none of their religions say this is what's going to happen to you, right? So we aren't prepared. So near death study is almost like a new religion to teach you. And most of the people that have had, in fact, all that I studied for this webinar in different cultures were religious. So that's good. They had a base of religion that would really help them understand. Okay. Okay, so your time, the sequence of events as a spirit occur, yet they appear to be simultaneous.
mhm.
So time is all around you. given that time is not the same, it's possible that the stream is not a stream as we would normally encounter it. I agree with him on that because when we think here, especially in America, it's very linear.
Mm-hmm.
And anything spiritual that I have felt has been circular. And so you need to think of the vortex, that kind of way energy goes. And then between you and I, there could be an oval of energy around us. So I believe the energy is more circular, not linear. Okay.
I agree 100%.
Right?
And
Yeah.
remote viewing, when I started doing in 1998, when I started doing precognitive remote viewing for Dean Radin and Russell Targ, I learned that time was not what I thought, because how could I pick out and draw a picture that hasn't even been picked yet? If it's not even 3 o'clock, how could you do that? If I didn't do those experiments, I would not have learned that time is not how we see it. But I can guarantee that time is not how we see it.
Yes, it is not. Okay, I have a great story. Or maybe I could read that. I don't know. We'll see how much time we have.
We're good. We're
Okay.
doing good.
Okay, good. Cognition, your thinking, is sometimes clearer and more rational, as judged by the descriptions of near-death experiencers. Okay. Memory appears to be intact and can include lives previously lived, although some are dreamlike. So many people who see this life review from being born till being dying, they had past lives that come on the movie, and they didn't believe in reincarnation, but now they do. So that's good. Metacognition. Sometimes problems figuring out one is dead. There's an awareness of their mental state. Now, there's a book called Leslie Lupo. She's a medium in Arizona. You might have heard of her. Anyway, she wrote a book, Every Breath is Precious. And I interviewed her one time. And she was trampled in a corral. Horses trampled her.
Oh.
And she watched and she said, I know I'm going to be dead. And so she had thoughts the whole time. And then her spiritual body stayed kind of floating because your spiritual body, gravity has no effect on it.
Mhm.
So when I watch those astronauts in space, just watch. That's how your spiritual body can go. It just flies all over the place. And that's hard for us as Americans to believe, right?
Mhm.
If we're just going to float, well, it's okay. Uh, anyway, so she said she came and stood by the people that were trying to revive her, right? And she thought, wow, I'm dead. I know I'm dead, but I'm still here. And I feel so good because they say when we leave this sausage casing of a body, we feel so free, right?
I'll bet
And
no pain.
no pain, no. And I wish that's one of the reasons this helps with grief so much is that I tell people, the people in 9/11, they didn't feel that fall. They left. Their spiritual body left. And because most people in grief will say, oh, I hope he wasn't in pain or he didn't suffer. They didn't suffer. That's why more people should understand this, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so metacognition, problem figuring out you're dead, but she knew. And okay, so the attention seems to function the same, except there's an ability to be in 100 places at once.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have to know that your spiritual body can do that. Okay, your affect, emotional experiences occur, but some with greater feelings of love. So everything is intensified as a spirit.
Mhm.
Motivation, different types. Okay, so a spirit has desires they want to meet. Now they say engaging in self-improvement. So there's some spirits that go there and they want to improve and interacting with the living. They want to interact with us many times because they're lonely. I
Mhm.
think spirits are lonely up there, a lot of them. And then they want to tell you something because maybe they died instantly and they didn't have time, right, to say goodbye. So that would be their motivations in coming to you in a dream or whatever. Okay, then in perception, they talk about mind sight, which is what Kenneth Ring, he developed that term, I believe, when he wrote the book about near death about blind people, because they said over there they could see, but they were seeing with their body and a different type of perception. So that's called mind sight. Okay. And so the conscious, unconscious, and the mind, the psyche sees in the sense of some combination of perception and knowledge, psychological attributes to the physical, to the spiritual body. And this is an expanded state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Communication appears to be telepathic. They try to send thoughts to you, a spirit. Self-talk. Now, he said the presence of which is unknown, but I just know from Leslie's story, she was talking to herself the whole time. Like, here I am. I'm still here, right? And decision making appears to be the same. Meaningfulness is perceived to the extent of the phenomenal consciousness, so the qualia, right,
Mm-hmm.
of their experience. Okay, so death is altered along 6 of 16 dimensions. 1 6 is physiology, behavior, phenomenal and behavioral consciousness, time, sense, and cognition. So those first 6 are in there. The most prominent is that the behavior of the body has ceased to be emotionally expressive. Okay, they can't talk to you, mostly. Time, sense, perception, and communication have changed, but not as radically as behavior. Okay, so what they're feeling is not as strong as what we're feeling is a lot of loss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have an altered state of consciousness, and he says, but not that altered. Well, for some people, when they're on the other side, they're pretty confused. So I would
You know,
say that altered state of consciousness would be dependent on your spirit, you know, and how much they know. My oldest daughter is on the other side, and when she came through a medium, she told a couple mediums this story that I had explained to her life after death, and that helped her. Now, Gail, I have no memory of ever doing this because she was not open to this kind of stuff, but I must have just gone off one day like a lecture. And she said it really helped her. So that's good to know. So this kind of education, I hope, is going to be helping people when they leave. The deceased person easily mistakes this state for sleep. And there's been speculation that the domain of dreams is the astral plane in which the deceased finds themselves. And so that would be easier maybe for people to get, that when you do leave your physical body, it's going to be very dreamlike, and you do that every night.
mm-hmm.
Okay, the body has ceased to be emotionally expressive. They can't talk to you. They send you thoughts. They can come to you in dreams. Now, I had a woman who called me like 6 or 7 months ago, or emailed me. She said, Karen, I don't know you, but I've watched your YouTube, and your name and phone number came on my phone. Just came, appeared. And she said, does this seem strange to you? And I said, no. No, it doesn't. So she had lost, an adult child. And I said, it's your adult child that put that there, because that's what spirits can do. They play with your phone, they play with your computers. And I mean, they come in. I've had spirits come in and change what I'm writing, and I don't like it. I was working with a medium in England. I told her, I don't like this. I don't want my typing messed around with. So I just stopped typing then, and I didn't agree to practice that, but they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to tell me something, but it was so crazy, right? I don't have time for that. If you want to tell me something, tell me in a dream. I'll listen. Now, one thing, they can send you thoughts, come to you in dreams. And if you want them to come to you in dreams, so anybody who's lost, like a guy named Charlie, so you're going to write a note to Charlie before you go to sleep tonight. And you're going to say, Dear Charlie, I'm missing you. And I want you to come in my dreams because I'd like to know where you are. I want to know lots of stuff. Just write to him, the one you love, and tell them. And so this woman wanted to have this relative come in her dreams. I said, well, write the note at night, and talk to him in a note. That gives more intention to help the spirit come in, because we don't know how much energy they're aware they have, right? Because they have to learn all that. Remember, there was a part of the ghost movie where I forget the guy who was the I can see his face,
Patrick
but
Swayze.
yes, Patrick Swayze's best friend was going to come over and put he wanted to make, have his wife become sexual with him, and Patrick was determined that wasn't going to happen, right? And so he's in the subway with this really mean spirit who says, now just push it with your fingers, right? Just do that. Well, so he had another spirit teach him how to do that. And so much of movies are so real about this ghost stuff. It's really
I,
amazing.
in fact,
Now,
Lloyd Auerbach turned us on to I don't know if it's Netflix or which show, but it was originated in England called Ghosts, and now they have an American version. And
That's on CBS on
yeah,
Thursday
it's
night.
a great show. But I want to tell you about one thing because it's coming up for me as you're talking about this. I'm thinking about it being almost, and I never thought of it till this second that we're talking about it being a two-way thing, the death and the people who are left after you die, because I'm a heavy griever person and I can feel other people's pains. So if I go to someone's funeral who I don't even know, I'm going to be crying for the people that can't let out the crying. So we
Okay.
know who I am. I feel that and I don't hold
Right.
it in.
Right.
So, and I've lost people since I lost my first boyfriend when I was young. So I've experienced the loss of people's and the grieving part of it. Well, when my friend Jean Malay died, I don't know if you know her, but she did like the first like biofeedback and
Ah,
shows with the brain with show she could take her brain and put it into beta, delta, theta, and then she'd be hooked up to a machine and the lights would show you different things.
yes.
Well, when she died and she was here at my house, where she would have liked to have stayed, I think, at the last few weeks of her death. But I felt like when I was caring for her here, that she should go to be with her daughter in Hawaii. That's the real person she should be with, even though I love her like a mother and I know I'm like a daughter to her. And when her daughter called to tell me she had passed, and it was about 6 weeks after I'd put her on the plane to go there, I never experienced the grieving that I've had when I've lost other mentors or people who meant the world to me. I mean, she meant the world to me. It wasn't like just somebody I
Yeah.
met and I liked her. And I couldn't
Right.
understand why wasn't I having my gut-wrenching grieving? Instead, I was feeling more like joyous or something. And I came to find out that in her time of passing, she decided she wanted to have psychedelics put into her food tube, into her feeding tube. And she had passed, just like Aldous Huxley, on psychedelics at the moments of death.
Okay.
And I experienced, and I kept saying, but I love her so much. How come my heart isn't wrenching? How come I'm not crying my heart out here? I'm feeling the sadness. So I think there's something that when a person dies more consciously, that maybe the people who are attached, I'm only thinking this now while we're talking, so it's
I,
new.
I like it.
Maybe something happens where the grieving is a little different because they're not tying on to you the same way in the
No.
invisible.
And it sounds like you were feeling the joyous energy she was feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
And I've
possible.
never had that before a death.
But yes, energy is transferred. Yes, I believe that. Absolutely.
So if we could die more consciously like she did, then the loved ones around us may not have that same kind of everyone's still going to grieve. There's nothing wrong with grieving. It's part of the process, but it was a joyous grieving, if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense from what I know.
Great.
Um,
I'm sorry I interrupted. I had to.
Now, these interruptions are excellent, and most people are going to really benefit from that. Now, spirits can send unusual animal, insect, or bird behavior. Now, so that's wonderful. And then I just recently in January last year moved to Nevada. So I'm talking to somebody, and they tell me these stories, um, that somebody has lost their husband or that they know of, and they have dragonflies come into their life, and they just love dragonflies because they believe that the spirit is sending them this message. So I'm doing some research, and I read that through a medium named Eric, the spirit who died as a 20-year-old, and he is able to affect physical reality to pull off his pranks. So this is just a 20-year-old spirit, including those involving insects. He has claimed that he can steer anything that can fly, but prefers different colored dragonflies because he finds them pretty easy to steer. He
Mhm.
does this by using his energy to manipulate the energy around the dragonfly. Um, he gets together with his deceased grandmother and aunt, And his grandmother likes to steer monarch butterflies because she thinks they are pretty. And his aunt likes tattered moths. The purpose of doing this, according to the spirit, is to chip away at people's skepticism bit by bit.
Mhm.
Now, but the fact that that is in a scientific APA book, that there is a spirit that can do this, because what happens to Americans, Carl Jung said this, is that we say, oh, it's just your imagination. And he got so tired of that because he felt imagination was so important and that
Mhm.
we needed to use it. And your clairvoyant ability that you have in, feeling people when they die, et cetera, et cetera. We have intuition, and that's a form of clairvoyance. And what we have to know is how to make our intuition, better for us. Like I had a robbery once in New York City, in the car. I'd been at a conference. I have all my neat jewelry and all my computer and everything. And I said to this friend, we were down in the village, oh, let's go to New Jersey and have lunch. I don't think we should have lunch here. I think this car is going to be robbed. And she, oh, come on, we got a parking place and everything. We said we were going to do this. I said, all right. So I was codependent. I let it happen. And so we get back in the car after 2 hours. We drive home. We open the trunk. It's completely empty.
Oh, God.
And I said to myself, that voice needs to be louder, right? But then I said, after a couple days of this, no, you need to listen better. And that's what we have to do. We have to almost keep a diary of your intuitive times. And then you'll know, hey, that's a pretty strong feeling. I'm going to believe in that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
So,
experience is the best teacher. That's what one of the, like, I didn't believe in spoon bending, even though, I saw pictures and this or that. But when I actually bent a spoon, I realized, oh, so I can understand these skeptical people. If you've never had any kinds of experiences, it's hard to grasp. And especially if we're talking about the invisible, it's hard to grasp.
yes,
But if people like you and myself keep going out there and talking about it and sharing everyone's stories, that's going to be able to open up other people's minds to things that they have not thought possible.
absolutely. Education, where it really helps your boggle threshold. Now, this is an Albert Einstein story I got out of Bruce Grayson's book called After. And this helped me understand the theory of relativity. And so I think we need to know that in order to understand all this other stuff. So
Interesting.
there's a man named Heim, Heim, last name, and he was a professor at the Zurich Polytechnic Institute where he taught geology. And one of his students was a teenager named Albert Einstein, who took at least 2 classes from Heim, and he later described a letter to Heim's son as magical. So this is Heim. He's up, like many people in Switzerland do. They go skiing, and he falls. Okay. All right. So when he was falling, it was to his shock a beautiful experience. He reported being astounded that he was feeling no pain at all. What I felt in 5 to 10 seconds could not be described in 10 times the length of time. All my thoughts and ideas were coherent and very clear. So this is how time is different when you're in your clairvoyant body. Got it?
Mhm.
Okay, so first of all, I took in the possibilities of my fate and said to myself, the peak point over which I will soon be thrown evidently falls off below me as a steep wall, since I have not been able to see the ground at the base of it. It matters a great deal whether or not snow is still lying at the base of the cliff wall, because if I fall on the border of the snow, I may come out of this with my life. But if there is no more snow down there, I am certain to fall on rubble, and at this velocity, death will be quite inevitable.
Mhm.
If, when I strike, if I am not dead or unconscious, I must instantly seize my flash of spirits, which apparently he held had a flash of vinegar, and put some drops from it on my tongue. I do not want to let go of my wooden staff. Perhaps it can still be of use to me. Hence, I kept it tightly in my hand. I thought of taking off my glasses and throwing them away so that splinters from them might not injure my eyes. But I was
Mhm.
so thrown and swung about that I could not muster the power to move my hands for that purpose. A set of thoughts and ideas then ensued concerning those who left behind. I said to myself that upon landing below, I ought, indifferent to whether or not I were seriously injured, to immediately call to my companions out of affection for them and say, I'm all right. My brother and 3 friends could sufficiently then recover from their shock so as to accomplish the fairly difficult descent to me. So these are all thoughts. So spirits have thoughts. My next thought was that I would not be able to give my beginning university lecture that I had been announced 5 days later. That's what I'd be thinking about. I considered how the news of my death would arrive for my loved ones, and I consoled them in my thoughts. And then I heard a dull thud, and my fall was over. Of course, he survived. It struck listeners that it took quite a while for him to recount the long and involved chain of thought he had just in a few seconds as he was falling had, right? Many other experiencers reported the same rapid thinking. So your thoughts speed up. Now, a decade later, Einstein published a revolutionary paper describing his theory of relativity, which proposed that time slows down the faster you travel. Now, this story proves that, right? It is impossible to know for certain whether this is anything more than coincidence, but it started Bruce Grayson wondering whether Heim's account of time slowing as he fell faster and faster lay quietly in the back of Einstein's mind and eventually influenced his idea that time is not constant, but varies according to how fast you are moving. Now, I just love that for us normies down here, who haven't studied physics. I just thought that was a wonderful, example. And then because you had your dog story, I want to give you my dog story if possible.
Okay, I just have to tell you, I don't know how come this keeps happening in each show, but my husband is the keynote speaker that we're going to Spain in March because he's giving a talk about gravity and and it, and it's all the scientists that are interested in the things that you were just talking about Einstein.
Right? Well, I can send you those sheets if you want,
I
because
bet
I
my
thought
husband would love to read that.
it was a wonderful story, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to first tell you about telepathy. Now, telepathic communication, which is what William James thought was happening when you went to a medium, that the medium was reading your mind about the deceased, and so was repeating back things you already knew. Then the people that were going to a medium were getting information they didn't know. And so they were going home and asking grandma and everybody, is this true? Oh, yes, that happened. Well, then James and his colleagues said, where is that coming from, right? Never occurred to them that the medium has bigger chakras than the rest of us. That's known. And so you're more clairvoyant, you get more information. So telepathic communication has been proven at the Rhine Institute, Duke University, and that's something that people really need to know. It's proven, it can happen. Now,
I helped prove some of that
okay,
because I
good.
worked with the neuroscientist uh Leanna Standish, and I went and did the second ever done fMRI telepathic experiment. I have pictures of my brain and videos of my brain, and it showed a change of blood flow in the brain during telepathy. So that's
Yes,
an actual piece of evidence.
that they have. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Emma, my party poodle, which you have in a picture there of me somewhere. Telepathic situations can never be repeated. Relationships with people and their animals is determined by their histories and by their feelings for each other. Emma felt if she tried hard enough, she could make me understand. I was really worried about a 53-pound dog putting herself directly in front and behind me, which was dangerous. It only happened once and it was meaningful. Now, Lawrence LaShawn, in his 2004 book, states that Emma and my relationship should be studied in relation to each other. Both of us had simultaneous assigned meanings to our behavior. ESP is like lightning because it's an emotionally laden relationship, and there was a need to communicate. It is a sudden connection between two bodies of their respective electric condition, and we were acting in a rhythm, and our connection created meaning. And this happened in leaving the sensory reality of desserts and went into the clairvoyant reality of a message about a dessert. Okay, so I'm going to read you the story. It was Halloween night, and my friend and I were going to go to a movie, but we decided to stay home. And I had a Hurricane Sandy house that had like 20 steps, and these teenagers come up the steps and they had hoods on. So I said, if you take the hoods off, the dog will stop barking because she doesn't like hoods. Now, and I had a bowl of chocolate bars. So I shoved it out the door, and Emma put her nose in the bowl, but everybody took a chocolate bars, and then I left it outside because my friend was coming and I had baked pie. Okay, so a friend came over about an hour later. We had a cup of tea and a piece of pie I just made. And then we had another cup of tea and another piece of pie. And after my friend left, I went into my closet to change into my pajamas. And as I walked out the closet, Emma was sitting in front of the doorway, staring straight at me. I asked her to move, and she did. I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. Upon leaving the bathroom, there she was, again, sitting very straight in the doorway. She's black and white, so she looks like a penguin. I again asked her to move, and she did. I went into the computer room to retrieve my glasses, and as I turned around from the desk, she was right in front of me. I almost fell over her. I was frustrated, and I bent down like you would talk to a 2-year-old child. I looked straight into her eyes and I said, "What is the matter with you? Don't you know you could cause me to fall? I could hurt you and myself. Just what is your problem?" The thought I then heard around my head was, "Everyone got something but me."
Oh.
I could not believe it. My first thought was, "But you're a dog." And then,
Oh, she's
and,
not.
and then I realized, yes, a dog, but a dog who expects things to be fair. And I gave her a treat and she went to bed. But, I wanted everybody to know you can hear her voice. And, and now, of course, when I have company, she gets fed first. And she
Well,
always gets a treat when we get dessert.
there was something you wrote, a quick statement. I was wondering you could just share with our audience the difference between human beings' consciousness and an animal's consciousness.
Well, animals have instinct and anything else they've been taught, right?
Hmm.
So, of course, she had been taught that if she stands in front of me long enough, she's learned that she's conditioned me. But still, I don't know that I would have thought she needed a treat because it had been like 3, 4 hours, right?
Right.
And I did not connect that she didn't get anything. So it just, I know she always is watching. It's just amazing. And I'm sure other people have animals that, they can communicate with.
And all the studies about where the animal knows you're coming home before you get there. There's so much, there's a lot of studies that's been done that show you that you're connected to your animal. And obviously, it's a spiritual, invisible connection. And I've always felt like with my animals, they know when you're depressed or sad or in need of them, and they come and curl up on your lap. They
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 do.
know how you feel. And for a little while, I was testing my dog where I would go into another room and I wouldn't call the name verbally, but I would call it from my heart with love and see if the dog could pick up my communication. And it's so satisfying when they do, and you realize you've really connected. And you forget that they don't talk English.
Well, you do. And really what people need to know is it's energy that makes us people. We have this
Yes.
energy. And of course you have the sensory reality where you and I are talking today on Zoom. And then we have the clairvoyant reality, which when we leave our body or when we get into a state where we have a spiritual experience, we're in the clairvoyant reality, the ether. We are above this sensory reality. And then there's another reality that LaShawn talked about the reality of where miracles happen. So if
Mhm.
you think about that too, that we have 3 different realities in our world, not just one. And then that's where we go, that we can go to other places, and nobody needs to be afraid of that. Um, and many people who have had spiritual experiences, they wait a while before they tell anyone,
Mhm.
because of course that is the fear that they're mentally unstable. And of course, none of that is true. So I really hope that um, watching Gail, because I think Gail's a wonderful educator, because she's so down to
Thank you.
earth. She's very down to earth, and everybody just loves her. So you need to know she has clairvoyant ability. That's what it is. And those are the people we need to be our future scientists in this area of spiritual experiences, I believe.
Hmm.
And so people have to get to know mediums. So that's another thing that I teach in this webinar is about mediums and where they study in England, and that mediums are born with this gift usually, unless you have watched that CBS Ghost show, which is wonderful, and the young girl who inherited the bed and breakfast place fell down a flight of stairs, and when she came back after 2 weeks, she can see the ghost. And it's a classic film from England, and we must have bought the rights to it because I watched the first English show on television, and we had the same 6 shows, although they have I don't know, maybe a man from, from way past in civilization. We have a Viking,
Right.
so we've
Yeah, they had a
just changed.
Neanderthal,
Yeah,
right?
the Neanderthal, right? So we've
I
just changed. But I watched that show, and you told me once that somebody died that you knew of, and he was a he, I think, and I think he was Asian, been a friend, and that he went through you.
Oh, yes.
Remember that? And you didn't
I
feel good.
can't forget that because I don't it's a physical feeling. I had a
Yes,
physical feeling. I was standing in my kitchen. It was Jeff
right.
Palmer. He's a man who, and he died a week before my father. So I was like, I had two people that I was like so close to that I was losing or were moving on. I wasn't losing them.
Yes,
And I wasn't able to go up to see him because it could have been any second for my dad. So I didn't want to leave my dad to take the 1 hour drive to where my friend was. And so I was feeling bad about that. And I was standing in my kitchen, and all of a sudden, and it's almost like it almost can take you down, like when it passed through me, I almost collapsed. But
yes.
I knew exactly in that moment. It's not like I've had hundreds of these ever happen. I
I know.
knew he came right through.
Yes.
And it was like he was on his way and he was like dropping in before he went on. It's hard to explain exactly.
You
And
told me that you felt kind of sick.
yeah, it was like everything.
Yeah,
I went, and then
right.
it passed, and it was, and at first I didn't know what had just happened. And then I realized that I received a phone call a little bit later. I, of course, then
Yes.
knew that that's what the validation is very important when you're not 100% sure what exactly happened.
Happened to you, yes. Well,
Yes,
if you've watched enough of those CBS shows, that there's a hippie, and she died because she was on pot or some hallucinogen, and she talked to a bear in the woods, and of course she was mauled, and that's how she died on the property where the bed and breakfast is. But she goes through people. Have you ever seen that happen on the show?
yes,
And
yes.
they feel high because that's how she died, high. And I think about you every time she does that, you know? I really do. It's funny.
It's a weird. So I had a bunch of things here on my list, and you've covered especially the six that I really wanted to cover. But there's one that I'd like to talk about that I find a little bit, I've experienced it once. I found it to be frightening. I understand it better, but I was very young when it happened to me, and that's possession.
Yes.
If we could just talk a little bit about, I'm saying, could this be the reason many people have been put into mental institutions for lack of knowledge, as this is a real phenomena? And a person in the house doesn't know, they come back and someone's possessed, and they could be violent, they can be out of a level of control that it takes three men to handle them.
Yes.
And then they're put in with heavy drugs and put in isolation or other things like this. This isn't not always a person going crazy. Sometimes this is the actual experience of possession. And I was wondering if
Yes.
you could share what you know about that as to today.
Yes. I can't think of the female author right now, but there is a female author who's known for this, handling possessed clients, and she talks to the spirit and the client. So she has some clairvoyant ability, definitely. But so I had in my practice in 30 some years about 4 people who came in and were possessed. And
Mm.
so I got to know an exorcist priest, and I also one was in Pennsylvania and the other one in New Jersey. I could just tell by talking to him, he was just afraid of my client because she was on, a psychiatric drugs. Well, yeah, but she's fine. She needs an exorcist priest, So we
Mm.
tried to find her one. So that's what I would do if I had a client like that again. I would find a reverend or a priest that I could work with. And Scott Peck has written a book, his last book, which was published like a month after he died. And he wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled.
Mhm.
Well, he wrote another book, and the last one he wrote, I can't think of the title right at the moment, but he would that would be the book to read, because some medium that knew him, Scott Peck became a Christian in his 40s, and this medium said that he needed a psychiatrist that would work with people who had been exorcised, the spirit taken off of them, because many times the spirit returns. Okay.
Mm.
So you can go through an exorcism. And the thing, if you do have a spirit, wear a cross. And if you feel that there's something around you, and tell it to get away from you, just like you would if somebody was coming into your house that you didn't want. So you get very nasty and you want it to go. You can, the Catholic Church is still training exorcists. They have a special academy in Italy for that.
Wow.
And then people tell me that now, a couple of cases that I had, one woman had a thought, and the spirit, the spirit would come in at night and do sexual things to her.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband was in the same bed, didn't know this was happening. And no matter how we talked about it, I said, you must have thoughts, or a thought when you go to bed, that this is going to happen, because your thought brings them in. So on some of them, okay. So she said yes, and kind of, back and forth, but she didn't want to get rid of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So she was getting some kind of something was she was getting some kind of benefit to
Get
herself.
out of that she didn't have in her regular life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another one, a woman, very Catholic, and she said she had no thoughts. Nope, nope. So I thought, well, I said, well, in any therapy that I have done or any research I've done, there's a high possibility that you are having some kind of thought, even if you're not aware of it, and you are asking the spirit to come in on some level, but it's an
Mm-hmm.
unconscious level, and I realize you don't consciously know that. No, I wouldn't even do that at an unconscious level. I said, okay, well then, I really can't help you, right? And then since I moved to Nevada, I've been going to a evangelical church, and I am just amazed at their faith.
Mm.
So in doing this cultural webinar, and being there, and some people have come up to be slain, to have the spirit taken away from them, and they are. But for the first half hour of that evangelical minister's service, they sing. That's all they do is sing. So if you're singing, and of course there's a computer screen with all the words on, and it's always about Jesus, you are activating your vagus nerve.
Oh.
And 30 minutes of singing like that, and they, especially if they play some of their favorites, most people don't realize they're getting ready for something to happen that's clairvoyant.
Well, it's
So
like chanting.
yes, just like
Any
chanting,
retreats
right?
where you just say the same three words over and over again.
So then I would tell people that if you do think that there's a spirit and you don't feel good about it, then you would try to find a therapist who understands possession. And maybe just Google some books. And you could always email me at Karen@KarenHerrick.com, and I'll tell you what books to read. And also, there are some mediums I understand who do this, who
Mm.
helped get rid of the spirit too. But in Scott Peck's book, he helped the one woman have a better life, right? I mean, what we would think is a better life, with no spirit involved. And another woman went back and had the spirit come back into her. That was her, like her inner world almost. And she wanted to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I had someone tell me a story people just tell me these stories, and well, you know, in the most amazing places that they felt they had a spirit attached to them since they were a child.
Uh-huh.
So, and I had never heard that. But I'm out here in the country, so I'm going to hear more of these types of stories. Um,
I wonder
and
if that was their higher self, or if
now, no,
no.
this was not a very good spirit.
Oh,
But
wow, okay.
and apparently the person told their mother, they weren't religious. They didn't go to church um, of any sort. So, but that eventually it was a man, and in his like over 60, he went to an evangelical minister and took the spirit away. But he said the spirit was always there with him. But I also, you know, asked him a little bit of questions, and it seemed like he was very afraid in his childhood, right? So if you're afraid and you're constantly worried about what's going to happen, that's when that's kind of energy, which is dark energy, is going to invite a type of negative a spirit on you. And you know, as a child, he was always afraid.
Hmm.
So that's basically what I know. And
Well, let me ask
that
you
of
one other question about that in possession. Uh, do you find people, because you've studied all these different alcoholic families,
hmm,
and I'm wondering, I've always wondered where I've families, if anything with alcoholism opens up a place where spirits enter them that are negative because they're very drunk, or they're kind of not really attached to their but I've
yeah.
never been
Well,
a
no,
person
that's
who
true
drank
because there
alcohol,
there
but I've
there is
seen
an
it.
opening of negative energy because they
Right.
are in depression, right? And because alcohol is a depressed state, the first drink lifts us up. Every other drink after that takes us down. And so many people drink for that first drink feeling, and you only get that in the first drink. And many times, and especially you've been drinking 20 years, you don't even get it then. You're just drinking because you want the escape.
So are those people more vulnerable to
Not
negative
that not
spirits?
that I found, and I worked with a lot
Oh,
of alcoholics and drug addicts.
good
Now,
to know.
I worked a lot with them, you know, of course, coming into recovery, but mostly in recovery too. So, but they never told me a story like that, you know,
Hmm.
that they had felt, you know,
Like somebody,
disposed, you know, to a
yeah.
negative. Yeah, I did. So I didn't find that, but, you know, maybe someone else did. I don't know.
Hmm. I was just curious because when I've seen him in that kind of condition, I
Oh,
thought,
yeah.
oh wow, something could enter now and really become they could become angry or violent, or some of these things that may not actually really be them, but it's their body being used.
And so
Because
many, you know, you're bringing up such a good point about psychiatric people, because in 1994, there were a committee of three psychiatrists from San Francisco who sent a proposal to the American Psychiatric Association for a new diagnosis. And they said they wanted a diagnosis called psycho-religious and psycho-spiritual problem because they found that so many people in the psychiatric ward at their hospital were having spiritual experiences. And it was something like a 14-page uh, proposal to the Committee on Religion. Now, who knew the American Psychiatric Association has a committee on religion? But they do. But what happened was, and they, in 1994, you had to have statistics, or you couldn't get in the new diagnostic manual because the diagnostic manual changes about every 5 years with supposedly what we see in our offices. So they were seeing this in the psychiatric hospital, and they've had proof that 30 to 40% of people in the United States and Great Britain were having mystical or near-death experiences,
mhm.
right? So what the APA did was they completely dismissed those statistics that got it in the book. They made it a V code, and it's only 1 inch. It's not 13 pages long. That tells you all, the whole story, different stories, right? And therapists don't use V codes because they're not paid.
Mhm.
So we have that, and now we have this 2023 book by the American Psychological Association. So hopefully, um, and this gentleman, Barusa Mance, he had a medium for 9 years come into his psychology classes, and they loved it. The students loved it, right? And then his dean found out and said, no more, no more medium.
Oh,
So you see, where, we really need people to know there is this clairvoyant reality and we're not crazy because we can feel it.
Mhm. Uh, there's something I didn't know about, I have never experienced, but I was just listening to about where people smell color or they have a
Yeah.
sense that, and then all of a sudden I forget what you call that. What do you sense?
Synesthesia.
Yes, I didn't know anything. I've never had that experience.
Right. See,
I had
everybody
so
has.
many, but that's one I've never had.
Right. And so to make a diagnosis, in my thesis, I proposed a DSM diagnosis, and it just came to me one night. And so someday I'd like to share that with somebody because you need a committee,
Mhm.
right? To really name, because we have so many different lists. We have, list of a mystical experience and list of a religious experience. And now we have Raymond Moody's list. And now we have 16 other things on a list. And really, I mean, so what we need to do is, have a committee where we can decide psychologically, what happens and the different levels. So, I mean, he's starting to do that by telling us, all this like after death phenomena and possession and reincarnation. He wants us to know more about reincarnation.
So
And
this is a big, so, and now, so what I'm understanding you saying is this man's book, the Psychology Association,
the American
the
Psychological,
American Psychological Association, this is
yes,
a big step for them to have a book
to
like this
publish.
come out and publish, which they have not really done this kind of thing before.
Oh, we've had all these other books come in on paranormal. We've all read them, right?
Oh, so this is wonderful that you're bringing this out to everybody, to people that wouldn't even know this was going on, who weren't involved with the
Yeah.
Psychological Association.
Yeah, they don't. David Brooks of the New York Times, he had an opinion in December on his spiritual experiences. So I wrote to him, but I haven't heard back. I just sent an email that I'm sure he doesn't know about the APA, which would validate a lot of the things he talked about, in his 2-page opinion.
Right, right, because people like to read that it's backed by something like an organization, and that means it's more real than if it was just a person telling you.
More people will at least show up maybe for therapists, or at
Yes,
least at their church talk about it. And a
yes,
lot of these places at church don't understand the American Psychological Association, right? Because they don't trust us because we have all this education. But we want to know what's happening to you.
right, right. Well, we're about an hour into our show now, hourish, and I'm looking over to see if there's I did have I have a couple of little mini questions. And then after that, if there's anything else you want to share or anything else you want to talk about, or if you want to wind down, I'm leaving that up to you. Two questions. One is about mediumship and one is about past life.
Okay.
On mediumship, since you've studied a lot of this now, how do you know? I mean, there's so many people out there, and there's so many charlatans, and these people that take advantage of the person's grieving and loss and charge them. Like all the things I've ever done with people, like connecting them to someone who's passed, that I do in a shamanic thing in my, where I'm close with people that come to see me. I don't advertise or do anything like that. I've never had any money involved with any of those things. I'm doing this because it's information coming to me from some place that doesn't charge money either. And if it helps and brings relief to somebody, I'm happy to be that vessel or whatever it is to help with that. How does people that, and I was just fooled recently by somebody who I thought was this and they really weren't that. So how does one know? Sometimes the gut can't tell. How do you know? And what could you tell a client if they want to see a medium? And I know it's been helpful for clients that you've sent them to. So how do they know
Yes.
how to pick? Because then they have a bad experience if they have one that takes them for a whole bunch of money, gives them some standard things that they know they can pick out of the hat, or they secretly look them up in the, however they do it. Um, what advice could you give to those listeners we have here today who might want to seek out a medium?
Sure. What you want to do is get a recommendation from someone who's gone before. And
Mhm.
so maybe a death group or some church group or whatever, I have a list of mediums in New Jersey that I do recommend, about two. And I asked the people that I recommend them to get back to me as to, whether that really helped. So you can keep, because anybody can have a bad day, and maybe the medium's going through a divorce. Well, that's going to shut down some of the energy. So just like anything else, you would go to a therapist who somebody says, oh, she or he is great, go, and I recommend it. So try to find somebody like that.
Hmm.
Um, you have holistic associations in your different towns usually, and they usually have mediums. They have psychic fairs, those types of things. But even then, it's like a cold call. But you can talk to people that are at the psychic fairs, and everybody wants to help everybody. So I would get involved with different people that know about this,
Hmm.
and different organizations that know about it. Also, there's the Windbridge organization in, I think it's Arizona, where they are, right?
And
Um,
that
and
town or city you mentioned, Lily.
Lilydale is a town that has mediums. Yes. Um, the Windbridge thing is online, and they have studied mediums. Let
Hmm.
me see if I have, because I have the bibliography from this class. Um, and you could they give you a list of, first of all, when you first go in, don't act like, oh yes, right, yeah, 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 he was my father, right, you know just be kind of cool about it, right?
Right.
And you're not going to give a lot of information, because if you have to do that, the medium isn't really seeing your person. So the medium should be able to say, I have a grandmother in front of me, and she has her hair in a bun, and she used to ring chickens, and so that you'd have chickens for Sunday dinner. Is that right? So something that that you wouldn't
You
know,
hear.
right?
Yes.
Or you would know, but nobody else would know, right? Um, so I think it's the Windbridge yes, Windbridge Research Center, which is windbridge.org. So that's a good place to get. They have free flyers they'll send you on how to test out a medium, right?
Great.
And so that's a wonderful thing. And then, just as I say, join some holistic association, or go to some of their meetings or some lectures, and then see. I mean, you have to meet people, and people want to help other people.
Right. So the
And
other last question I had is on past life experiences. Is there any new information or research on this that is there anything new that hasn't been said or anything new that's come up about this that's being accepted by the community or the psychological community or
not that I know of particularly. However, um, where you should go for past life information is Edgar Casey Foundation in Virginia Beach.
Mhm.
Um, and let's see, what is his? Edgar Casey was a medium before penicillin came about, and he would help people that had physical problems. So he founded a massage school, and he had some holistic things, like he loved castor oil, but you didn't drink it. You put it on your body with flannel and some heat and all different kinds of things. So they have an association called the Association of Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. That's ARE. Okay. And then they also, you can reach them with www.edgar, edgarkcayce.org/. And they have a bookstore, and their people write books. And they have a wonderful, they have courses that you can, you buy the course, I don't know, for $50. And they have one on how to determine your past life. Okay.
Oh,
So one of the things is to have do you have a geographical interest of another country? Like when I was 10 years old, I wanted books on Mary Queen of Scots and Queen Elizabeth I. Now, I was an alcoholic truck driver's daughter. What was I doing with Queen Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots? But I find out I have a Herrick ancestor who was the goldsmith for Queen Elizabeth I.
wow.
William Herrick. So, and my father's name was William Herrick. So, I mean, you have an interest. Why do you have that interest? Figure that out. and then learn about that country and read all kinds of novels about it and that time period, right? And then what kind of furniture do you like?
Mhm.
What kind of clothes do you like? What's your favorite outfit? If you went to a Halloween party, what would your favorite character be? All these different things that people say, well, it's just your imagination. But
Mhm.
your imagination teaches you so much.
Yes.
So I would recommend Edgar Casey for past life. And Edgar Casey didn't believe in reincarnation. He was a nice, country guy who had this medium clairvoyant ability. And in teenage years, he laid on his math book under a tree because he fell asleep. And when he woke up, he knew the whole math book.
That's the way to go.
Right. So, and he was a trance medium who went into trance, and he helped people all over the world, and he died because he was so overworked. um, and he would have you like, you could have an appointment on Friday from 1 to 3 where you would lay on your couch in your living room, and they would tell you to do this, and then Edgar will go into trance, and he found in the Akashic records, which if you read Leslie Lupo's book, Every Breath is Precious, she went to the Akashic records, and there's supposed to be a file on every one of us up there. And he would say, well, you have this hip problem because in a past life you were a Roman soldier and they put a sword through your hip, and that's why you have pain now. And that's another thing to try to figure out, are the different physical problems that you have, because I happen to have a granddaughter who's um, what do I want to say? She's in the same state as Christopher Reeves, except
Mhm.
she's disabled. She's off a ventilator, and she's an artist in Santa Cruz. And I called. I was at the Edgar Casey Foundation. I used to go there at Easter. They have great Easter service. They have a conference that starts on Thursday, and then you have each Easter service on the beach at 6 a.m. and then you go home. And it was great. So anyway, one of the guys there found out about Sasha. I think it was when she first was disabled, and he said you should call this Seminole Indian in Florida. Now he only takes calls from like 3 to 5 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and he would be able to tell you about Sasha. So I called, and he answered the phone, and he told me about Sasha. Now before that, I had my right hand wasn't working right, and I couldn't feel these three fingers, and so I had gone to a doctor who had sent me to a surgeon. When I went in that day, it was a Friday, hot in New Jersey. Oh my God, in the summer. And they said, oh, we haven't got your x-rays. And so if we don't have your x-rays, you can't have an appointment. So I waited. He said, let's try, we'll get them sent again, right? So they send for the x-rays. X-rays don't come. I
Mhm.
didn't really want to be there on Friday afternoon anyway. So I said, I'll just go over to the surgeon's office and I'll pick up the x-rays and I'll come back, right? So I went to the surgeon's office. They couldn't give me the x-rays, so I was going to call them. But meanwhile, I was going to visit them and get them. I talked to this Seminole Indian, and he said, and you're having trouble with your right wrist. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, he said, you don't need surgery. I said, how do you know that? He said,
Great.
well, because this is what I do. So he said, you get this oil, go get this oil, which I did from a pharmacist. And he said, you were you were a midwife at one time in France. And he said, the Catholic Church cut off your right hand because you wouldn't stop healing.
Oh.
And he said, it's a past life problem. Now, I have a poodle. Everybody can see that. I've had like a couple of men in my life that invited me to go to Paris with them. I don't want to go to Paris. No, thank you. Now, I've traveled all over the world, right? I don't want to go to France. I just want a poodle. So all of a sudden, it made sense that something bad happened in France. So, I mean, it's all from your own biography. And it's a wonderful way to learn.
Yes, I never think about my father taught me that, but he used it as the words he would say. He always said, "The day you're born and the day you die has already been written." So don't bother thinking about when it's going to happen because it's already been decided. You're not going to, it's not your decision. It's been made already. And he also said that, oh, don't do this. If you do these bad things in your life now, like say you do something to another person or you hurt them in certain ways, he said, and then you wonder why are they born with a club foot? Well, did they damage some other person? So he would always explain it to me as a karma thing,
That's
not
karma.
as
That is
another
karma.
life. Yeah.
Yes.
And um uh I try to not think that there's a judgment on negative and positive or dark and light, or that it's all part of the whole thing. And it's really my near deaths and extreme illnesses or whatever I've had growing that makes me who I am today. So that suffering taught me a lot of things. So I don't judge it as, oh, I wish that never happened to me. It's
Yes.
part of the plan. But
Yes. It's your
the
trial
karma,
by fire.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what Jung said. We all have a trial by fire, because clients will say to me, well, why is this happening to me? I said, well, I don't know anybody who hasn't had some kind of trial in this life. And I think you come in here sometimes to suffer. And that's what Carl Jung said. But you have to figure out how to change that. How are you going to change your karma, which are consequences? There are
Mhm.
consequences, right? So if you think about it like that, um, that's the way that I try to think about it. And okay, this is just another instrument for me to grow somehow. And so I'm going to try and have faith. And since I've had a spiritual experience where the Holy Spirit came in, I know there is a God. So,
Mhm.
because I felt that. And then I went to Egypt and I was taken to a church because we had 2 hours we could go somewhere, or at least, well, 3 hours. And so I told the guide, I want to go to this church where the Virgin Mary appeared, right? Um, okay, so because they said we have 3 or 4 hours of time in Egypt because we had paid extra to go in the pyramid to meditate, all this stuff. And I thought, oh, well, I saw that in a newspaper ad, not ad, but story about the Catholic Church believed it. So they built this cathedral. So anyway, he tells a taxi cab driver, and everybody else didn't have anything to do. So 12 of us, which I thought was an interesting number, get into 3 cabs and they drive. Now, when you go to Egypt as a Christian, you have to wear long sleeves and a long skirt as a Christian female, or they ask you to, which I did. And so an hour in the cab with no air conditioning, and you get there and it's not the cathedral. So somebody in our party spoke Italian, and they found somebody in the church that spoke Italian. And they said, no, the Virgin Mary had never been seen here. And I said, no, I know it. It's not the right place. So we're walking around outside. And anyway, and I come by this wall. And by this time, 2 of the cabs went back, because if we hadn't been back by 4 o'clock, we couldn't meditate for the extra time. So anyway, I see this sign. It says St. Barbara in English, and it has a little explanation. And I have an Aunt Barbara. So I thought, wow, I didn't know there was a St. Barbara. And then I look to my right, and it's like subway stairs, right? So I look down there and I see like a street, and it has a banner of the Virgin Mary and Christ. So I said, come on, this is it. So we go down there, and then I wear silver jewelry and all that. And Madame, there's store. It's another world down there, just another street. So no, that's right. I don't need any jewelry. I gotta follow this banner. So I did. And you come to a church, was not a cathedral. It was held up by 2x4s. We go down in it, and my fiance at the time and this other couple sat down to pray. Well, I'm not in a prayerful mood. See where the Virgin Mary appeared. So I go up by the altar, and there's this drape, right? So I push the drape pass apart, and there's this lady that appears on my left, and she says, you can go in there. I said, you speak English? She said, yes. I said, you speak lovely English. She said, well, thank you. I said, well, what's in there? She said, well, it's the apartment where the Holy Family fled when they were getting away from Herod. So you have to realize I'm hot. I've been running around. So I said, which Holy Family? He said, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Oh, that Holy Family. So you go in there and it's this little room, and then down there and more steps is it's all water because they diverted the Nile. Now the apartment is full of water. But this was the first Coptic church in Egypt, right? Now I was just taken there, like Jung says, chance rules, right? You got a gut feel, try it. Because I had this spiritual experience where I knew there was God. I don't know about this Jesus thing. And I thought, well, it's a historical religion, right? And
Yes.
then I went back and I didn't go to meditate in the king's chamber. I just sat by the pool because we hadn't been by this beautiful pool. I was in awe that you could find the apartment where they lived, right? So I tell our guide at night, I said, you should tell more Christians about this, right? Now there's 1% Christianity in Egypt. His eyes just glazed over. He wasn't going to tell anybody,
Ah.
right? We don't want you to know stuff. But that was wonderful. So half of life is showing up, really.
Yes. And following your gut or the
Yes,
little voice inside you. I do find the more that I listen to my little voice, it does get stronger.
yes,
And I find that to be a very good help. But the physical, Dean Radin used to call it the other brain, that you had a brain in your head and you also have a brain in your gut. And
yes.
that's the belly brain.
Well,
And
that's Jung says that your unconscious has knows more than you think it knows, right?
mhm.
So that you have all this, and I wish I'd known that with all that test anxiety in school. Like I
Yeah.
know.
Or you could just lay down like Einstein and just slept on a board with Edgar Casey, I mean, and sleep with the book.
Now you mentioned, and then I do have to end, and I hate to end because it's been fun,
Yes, we
as
do
it
have
always
to
is
end.
with you. But the spiritualists now in 1840 something, spiritualism started as a religion in upstate New York, and that's where Lily Dale was founded, and a lot of women were mediums at that time, and now there's men too. But they didn't charge for a medium reading because they believed that the gift came from God,
Right.
right? But now, of course, they do charge. But they would have Lily Dale has a list of qualified mediums, and these mediums live other places. Now, in Florida in the winter, they go to Casadega. So Casadega would be another town you could visit, and they would have a list of qualified mediums there. And it's like anything else, though. Yeah, you might want to try to interview a couple of them and see what you think,
Hmm.
because you get a feeling.
I'd like to take a little trip up to that town in New York and see that just to go there. I met somebody recently when I was visiting New York who lived there for a while, and he was a very interesting character. So it sounded like an interesting place to just to check it out.
It's very interesting. If you ever want to go, I'll go with you because
Okay.
it because it's fun, and they have different conferences from the good months like April or May to September, October.
Hmm.
And so you can, they have a catalog with all these conferences in there that you can learn about the different mediums there, or any kind of paranormal, activity you want to understand better.
Very interesting. How far is that a drive, like say from New York City?
About 9 hours.
Oh, so it's way, way upstate.
It's Lake Erie. You
Oh,
can't get any further west in New York. I don't know.
okay. That's it. They had to go that far
I know,
just to get
but
away from
what the
Times
best
Square.
part of going to Louisville, not just the medium strip, when you leave, you pass 2 hours after you leave Lilydale, going toward New Jersey, where I used to live. You pass the Corning Institute, so the Corning Ware, right, glass company. They have the best gift shop I've ever been in.
Oh,
So you always leave at 9 o'clock when you're going home, and you get there at 11, and you shop, and you have lunch in their cafeteria, and then you're ready for the other drive home.
sounds
So you
wonderful.
have to plan shopping along with it.
Yes. Well, makes it a full trip then.
That's right. They have the
Okay.
best glass Christmas and Halloween ornaments. Oh my God, it's
Oh,
beautiful.
well, is there any other things you want to share or any pieces of wisdom you want to leave with our listeners today before we sign off?
I think the biggest piece of wisdom would be that the more that you understand about life after death, the better death you're going to have. And then the more that you can help your loved ones who are in grief. Because the best news is that there are spirits that want you to ask them to come into your dreams so
Mhm.
that they can prove to you they're still alive on some level. And that is so meaningful to people who are in grief. So we
Yeah.
need all of these stories to be, talked about, and we need more therapists to have groups where they can discuss all this stuff. And because the more you discuss it, the more you remember what has happened to you.
Yes, and the sharing, you learn more things that are possible.
Yes.
Um, I heard some words in this class I was just telling you I was taking that I thought was a beautiful saying, where you approach the person and say, I would like to assist you in having a beautiful passing. Like instead of thinking it, oh God, the death is coming, or thinking of it with some kind of it's not you, it's you're watching it for someone else. But if you could approach that person and say to them, I'm going to be there with you as far as I can, or wherever I can be with you till, but we're going to have a beautiful death. You are going to have to have it as a beautiful experience. Then we don't think like that at all. When we're thinking of the death thing, we're all, we- I think to
It's the
change the
same with,
thought.
yes, change our thoughts. We need to do that. Eckhart Tolle, Oprah just recommended his book for the second time, which she never does. Something
Mhm.
about the good earth, I believe. And he said, it's not what happens to you, it's what you think about what happens to you. That's where you have the problem, is in your thoughts. And the more that you can expand your thoughts, the more you can have a better life and a better death.
I think these are beautiful things, and all of us are going to die. It's not like we can miss that. You know what I mean?
It's going to happen one of these days.
Right. And so educating and experiencing any of these experiences. I remember we did a retreat with Stephen and Andrea Levine on death and dying. And during the retreat, they did something that I thought was so silly and I couldn't understand it. And now I do, because I was in my 30s then. And it was where you had to pretend that you were the person that was dying, and you had to let the person opposite you, and you would each take a turn doing it. They had to feed you because you weren't able to feed yourself. And so this reversion of having to be like a baby again, where you maybe have to be diapered, where you have to be fed, how do you graciously accept that? Well, I'd never even thought of trying it out as a experience. And so when we did that, I never forgot that. It really left me with a very important exercise of feel what it's like to be the vulnerable person that has to be fed, and how you have to let go of your ego, that you cannot do this, but that the person is doing this with you with loving kindness.
Yes.
And I just thought that was such a silly little thing at first. What are we doing this for? Now I understand it.
It's all those exercises that therapists do. We have meaning.
Yes, there's all very good meanings in these things. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us today. I thoroughly enjoy having I have a few returning guests this year, and I'm just so happy to see the work that everybody's doing and what they're moving on with. It's like everybody has a lot that they're doing, and I'm really grateful for everything that you've done and all your books, and that
Thank
you're
you.
going to do this particular webinar for other therapists to help educate. And I really hope that you have a large group that signs up.
Me too. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity, because, it's like having tea, and I just love having tea with you.
I do too. So, and anytime you're in the San Francisco area, I love
All
your
right.
guest room. You're always welcome here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All
All
right.
right.
Have a great, great, great time. I will see you again soon. And to all
Okay.
you
Thanks, Gail.
listeners, I hope you sign up for the webinar tomorrow. Have a wonderful week. Remember, listeners, share your stories, because stories can heal. Thanks so much, Karen.
Oh, you're entirely
Bye.
welcome, Gail. Bye bye. You have a good day.
You too.